Hi everyone, hello and welcome back once again to Hansraj e-Samvaad, the Center of Digital Creation and Distribution of Knowledge at Hansraj College, University of Delhi. My name is Piyush Chaudhary. I am currently working as an assistant professor at the Department of English at Hansraj College. So this is the second lecture in the series of lectures on the novel Azadi by Chaman Nahal, which is a part of the BAc titled Reading Indian Fiction in English. In the previous lecture, we discussed the introduction to partition literature. I gave a brief introduction about the novel Azadi and the various aspects that Azadi takes up. This lecture today will discuss the detailed summary of this long novel by Chaman Nahal. But I would like to give a disclaimer before I actually begin with the summary. The summary is only to help understand, to help the students understand the novel. It is in no way, I'm repeating, it is in no way a substitute to the original reading of the novel. So I would sincerely urge all the readers, all the viewers of this video to first read the novel in its entirety so that you can appreciate the novel and its narrative. This summary that I'll be delivering now is just to aid the understanding of the novel. Also, I would be commenting on some aspects of the novel within this summary itself. So this lecture will be a mix of the summary as well as some critical analysis of the various characters, the various situations that the novel presents us with. So it is better, I would suggest, to read the novel first and then you should come back to this video. So on this note, now I will begin with the summary of the novel. So as we know, there are three parts in total. In this novel, basically there are three parts. The first one is titled The Lull. The second one is titled The Storm. And part 3 of the novel is titled as The Aftermath. So since we are just beginning, we will begin with the first part, which is titled The Lull. So this part, as the name itself suggests, represents the calm before the storm. In this part, we will realize the moments of tension, the moments of calmness, the moments of false hope, the moments of, the false sense of hope and aspirations before the partition tragedy actually struck the nation. So now, I'll go on to part 1, chapter 1. In this lecture, I'll be discussing till chapter number 3, and in the subsequent lectures, I'll be, going ahead with the summary as in, So I'll begin with chapter number 1. So the novel begins on the 3rd of June 1947. Lala Kanshiram, as we know, is the head of the family, and the first chapter describes his family. We are told that he spoke Punjabi, which is the language of the area, which was partitioned, and the language that he used to write was Urdu. And Hindi was not the language that he understood, but he very proudly used to write Hindi in census figures. We are then introduced to his wife, Prabharani, who is an illiterate woman. She is a good looking woman and she is very, very devoted to her family and very faithful towards her husband and towards her family. She respects her husband and considers him almost as a god. So the family of Kanshiram is described as a middle class family living in Sialkot. So Kanshiram is described as a patronizing teacher. In fact, he used to teach his wife, and every now and then he used to tease his wife, he used to teach his wife and also inform her about the latest news of the world from the newspaper. So they are living a normal life, a happy life, a casual life, any average, middle class life. That is what they are living. Then Kanshiram is also described as a nationalistic man, as a man who loves his nation, and he's a nationalist. He's extremely proud of his Vedic civilization and the Arya Samaj to which he belongs, right? And also his Hindu identity. He dislikes the foreigners and he hated the British, but at the same time, he also understands that the British has certain good things as well. So there is this paradox in his nature. He believes that the British has united India like never before. Because prior to the British arrival in India, it was the Muslim rulers and the Sikh rulers and the Maratha rulers who were ruling the country, and there was lack of unity within the idea of India as a nation. This is what he believed, right? So therefore he praises Britishers for that. Also, he's described as, as I just mentioned, he's a paradoxical character. So he, in a way, he's a character, he thinks very highly of himself, right? Then the readers are informed that he was once even taken into the prison, but he always used to tell everyone that he was taken to the prison because of his nationalistic nature. The reality is that Kanshiram shows that he hates the Britishers, but deep down he admires the Britishers and respects them a lot. He showed to the world that he hated the British, but he admired them, and even several times he went down to see the parade of the British. He even takes his son Arun to make him see the parade of the British, to make him understand the grandeur, the magnificence of the British Raj. Right? He even used to send whiskey and other grains from his shops to the English superintendent of police free of cost. Right? But we get to know that his gifts were, they were taken by the Muslim city inspector who would consume it himself. And one day the police superintendent even came to Kanshiram's stores, and Kanshiram was not willing to accept the money, and the police superintendent rather kept all the money and went away with the grains. So as soon as the police superintendent left, the Muslim city inspector came and took the money and kept the money in his pocket, and at least Kanshiram was happy that the city inspector has at least accepted his favor. So he is sort of a man, is like a bootlicker, right? He would like to be always on the favor of the powerful people. Therefore, we get to know that Kanshiram hates the British, but deep down, he is. It is all superficial, and he looks upon the British as the saviors of the country. He even used to attend the e-Samvaad meetings and other meetings, but deep down he was always worried that the British might come and take away him to the prison for attending such religious meetings. Right? Now, in the new year, we get to know of the dog shooting practice by the British. Several dogs were forced by people to come to a corner, and the British sahibs would kill them. This also reminds us of the Jallianwala Bagh massacre in 1919, where instead of dogs, the British killed Indians by cornering them. But despite this, Kanshiram does not hate the British. In fact, on the contrary, he hailed British Raj as the supreme Raj. So look at these lines below that I am showing to you on the screen. As you can see, what method to Lala Kanshiram was the precision of the British Raj, which was seen in as small an act as the killing of a stray dog. No wonder they rule the world over. No wonder, she said to himself, there indeed was no Raj like the Angrez Raj. Right? So what do these lines suggest? These lines suggest that Kanshiram thought very highly of the British. Very soon, we also get to know that Kanshiram was totally smitten, he was highly impressed by Lord Mountbatten and his handsome looks. He thinks very highly of Lord Mountbatten, who will give freedom to the Indians. Right? Now, since they lived in Sialkot, which was dominated mostly by Muslims, they knew that if partition happened, then they will have to leave Sialkot and they will have to go to Hindustan. They will have to leave all their property, all their old life in Sialkot itself. This thought upsets Prabharani deeply, and even Kanshiram, but Prabharani, being the good devoted wife that she is, asks her husband to go to the shop and not worry about it. She wants her husband to feel absolutely safe and secure, and she wants him not to worry much about the partition. Lala Kanshiram goes to listen to the radio podcast that will be announced in the evening, which will announce the partition plan of Mountbatten. And chapter number 1 ends here. Let us now go to the next chapter, and that is chapter number 2. Now, chapter 2 of the novel, it firstly begins with the radio broadcast, right? We are then introduced to their neighbor. Her name is Ishar Kaur, who belongs to a Sikh family, and the name of her husband is Sardar Niranjan Singh. So the two families have been living in Sialkot since decades, and this woman Ishar Kaur is having really bad thoughts about the partition, because she believes that if partition happens and if violence comes up, then for sure the Muslims will kill her, they might harm her, they might kill her husband as well and drive them away. And already at this point of time, Ishar Kaur is already pregnant by 4 months. So therefore, she has great worries about her unborn child. Now comes the radio broadcast, which will tell about the decision of partition of India, which was also known as, historically it was known as the Mountbatten Plan, as the readers would realize. This radio broadcast was to be telecast on the 3rd of June 1947. And by the way, 3rd of June 1947 is the day when which, the novel actually begins. So coming back to the woman, Ishar Kaur, who is the neighbor of Lala Kanshiram. So the author tells us, Chaman tells us that, his wife Prabharani is very close to Ishar Kaur, and they both discuss the prospect of riots and violence happening due to partition, and both are very worried. Then Arun comes. Arun is the son of Kanshiram and Prabharani. He appears and he simply says that Pakistan will be created. So, in this particular chapter, the fears, the tensions, the confusions, the hopes, the broken aspiration in common people is very vividly portrayed at this point of time. Then we are told that there are few people in the shops in Sialkot, in the bazaar in Sialkot, who believe that Gandhi will be able to save India from getting partitioned. Then there is another shopkeeper who is described, his name is Abdul Khani. He was a Muslim shopkeeper who used to sell hookahs by making hookahs, but he was extremely happy with the thought of Pakistan because he knows that once Pakistan is created, the Hindu shopkeepers will leave that place and those shops can be taken over by the Muslim man. Right? Then right afterwards, the author describes the public, tap of water, the public water, which is basically a community water fountain. Right? So the author describes how people of all religions used to come, all walks of people, all religions, they used to come, be it Sikhs, be it Muslims, be it Hindus, to drink water from the community tap. And then for a few pages the author takes us back to the past of Arun, who was a young child, and how he used to look at the way Abdul Ghani used to make hookahs. Then we are also told that this was during the times when Arun was a little child, and now since the past few years, since the past 3 to 4 years, since the news about Pakistan has come up and since the news about partition of India has been going around for some time, Abdul Ghani has completely changed, and he used to call Arun as Puttar. Puttar basically means son in Punjabi, but now he doesn't refer to him as his son, right? So this was a few years before independence, but since the last 3 to 4 years, Abdul Ghani does not talk nicely with Arun. So in this chapter, Chaman Nahal tells us that both the Hindus and the Muslims, they spoke a common tongue, they wore identical clothes, but still they, something happened in the last 3-4 years which created huge shifts between them. As you can see on page number 54, both the Hindus and the Muslims, and I am quoting, spoke a common tongue, wore identical clothes, and responded to the weather, to the heat, and the first rains in an identical manner. But despite that, all of a sudden everything changed, and there is a feeling of enmity and hatred in Abdul Ghani against the Hindus of Sialkot. Look at what Chaman Nahal tells us, how he describes the change in Abdul Ghani's attitude in these words, and I am quoting again, as you can see on the screen. His neighbors treated him as an equal, and he had lived in peace with them. But the Muslim League had slowly made him aware of the threat to him in a free Hindu India. It was not a question of his personal views. The League, or Jinnah Sahib, knew better. They said, view your Hindu neighborhood with suspicion, and he did that. They said, there should be a Pakistan, and he shouted for Pakistan. Unquote. So therefore, in chapter number 2, the author Chaman Nahal is trying to say that it is only the politicians like Muhammad Ali Jinnah who sowed the seeds of hatred in people like Abdul Ghani. And this point, to a great extent, is historically correct, because when Jinnah was not getting Pakistan, he called for communal riots. He called for Direct Action Day, the DAD, which is popularly known as the Direct Action Day. This is the part of official history. And this Direct Action Day created mass unrest, violence, and huge repercussions, and created a stronger drift between the Hindus and the Muslims. Because the politicians like Muhammad Ali Jinnah, were openly asking the Muslim people to kill Hindus and attack them. Then we are described, the house of Bibi Amarvati. She is the landlady, a very rich woman of that area. She had a husband, his name was Gangumal, and she also had a son, his name was Suraj Prakash. So Amarvati was a rich woman who owned 2 big buildings in Sialkot, and these were her 2 buildings, and she used to put the buildings on rent, and a huge amount of money used to come every month from her tenants. We get to know that this woman Amarvati is a matriarch. She is the leader of the house, and her husband and her son are mostly weak people, weak-willed men. It is in her house that a radio is kept, and everyone is coming to listen to the broadcast. Then we are described the husband of Bibi Amravati, his son Suraj Prakash, who, Chaman tells us, contrary to his name, is not at all a man of Prakash or of knowledge. Right? He was a village idler, he was a dumb man who used to spend his time doing nothing. And then, on the radio, the plan of partition has been announced, and most of the people simply cannot believe that the partition has happened and that Pakistan will be formed. And then Lala Kanshiram does not want to leave Sialkot because he has been born in that city. He loves that city so much, right? He wishes to stay there, but his son Arun is much more realistic and tells him that they will not be able to live here because the Muslims will kill them and drive them away. And finally, Arun thinks about his his uh, his lady love. Her name is Noor, who is a Muslim girl that he loves. And here, chapter number 2 ends. Let us now go to the next chapter, and that is chapter number 3. Now, chapter number 3 begins with celebrations and firecrackers, because the Muslim in the city are now celebrating. They are happy that Pakistan will be created, right? So the entire atmosphere in the Hindu areas, like Lala Kanshiram's home, it is all very tensed. They are not able to eat, right? And suddenly, all of a sudden, a procession of Muslims come in the night into their street near their residential place. Hundreds of Muslims have gathered there, and in the next 2 pages, the Muslim mob is described who is angrily celebrating Pakistan. They are shouting slogans in favor of Pakistan, and then the policemen come, but they know that they will not be taking any action because the Muslims are already in frenzy, and the police already has very little men, and there are hundreds of Muslims. So what can they possibly do? They just wanted to enter the Hindu street and take their procession from there. So it is a tensed situation, and suddenly, when the Muslims were about to break the gates open, Inspector Inayatullah Khan comes there, and sensing that he should not infuriate his Muslim brothers, he wants them to take the procession through the Hindu street peacefully. He allows the Muslim to go through the street, and then just then the deputy commissioner arrives. Okay, the deputy commissioner is a Hindu, right? So, and then the name of the deputy commissioner is Prannath Chadda, and he comes with the superintendent of police. The name of the superintendent of police is Asghar Ahmad Siddiqui. Both these people, they were trained in England, and they both clearly say that Asghar Ahmad Siddiqui clearly mentioned that he has to go to Pakistan to serve as the superintendent of police, right? So then finally, with the assurance of the deputy commissioner, who is like a magistrate, who is like the district commissioner, by his assurance, the gates were opened and the procession was allowed to continue through the street. But deep down, even Prannath Chadda knows the reality that he could not have taken any step to prevent the Muslims from attacking if they so wish to. So chapter 3 ends here with huge amounts of tensions growing between the Hindus and the Muslims, and it appears that a riot can break out at any point of time. Even though these Muslims were able to take their procession, no such riot actually occurs, but then the situation is tense, and now the novel is open to the new possibilities of any mass violence or any arson, loot, murders, any sort of physical or sexual assaults that can happen. So the tension is building up at this point of time where chapter number 3 ends, right? So that is it. In this lecture, I will cover only the summary till chapter number 3. The remaining chapters of part 1, I will be taking these parts in the subsequent lectures, which will be uploaded, in a series. It's a long lecture series. So I'll see you in the next lecture and in the next part in another video. This was a summary for the first 3 parts of the novel. The remaining chapters will be covered, as I've mentioned, in the subsequent lecture. So stay tuned for more parts, and I will see you very soon. Thank you, and keep sharing this video with others. I will see you right back. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.